All right, before Anthony, did you just go for a run or what? What's the deal here?
There's a morning workout. Got to get the blood pumping a little bit.
Oh my goodness, I'm nowhere to ever talk about the way somebody looks, but this is hilarious. You just you look like you literally came in off the track or something.
It's just we're playing for the tie these days.
Yeah. This is Worst Seats to the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Welcome back on this beautiful Friday morning, which hopefully a lot of people will have the 3-day weekend here with the 4th of July. Happy holidays, everybody. And this is our last podcast before Anthony and I leave this weekend for Europe. I'm leaving Sunday. You're leaving Monday. But really excited for this upcoming trip, Anthony. And we're going to have an amazing trip next year, too, that we're going to be announcing soon. Should we tease it?
We could tease it. Why not?
Yeah, we're going to Croatia next year on a yacht cruise throughout Croatia. So that is going to be absolutely unbelievable. It's a longer trip, too. I think it's 12 days, Anthony.
12 days, yeah.
Yeah, the itinerary looks incredible. We'll be announcing all that soon. We already have the dates. Actually, let's tell everybody the dates if you want to come. Talk,
it's
Anthony.
In July 2027. I've got it in my calendar already.
You already put it in your. Don't you think we should have Alex, our producer, come on this upcoming trip because we need a producer on scene.
I think it would be great, and that way we could do a couple shows while we're over there. I'm excited about this trip. I haven't been to we've been down to Cinque Terre, but not really along that Italian Riviera coast. I'm excited about visiting Barolo country and Piedmont, a couple good vineyard tours on this trip, and starting out with a couple days in Lake Como, which was one of my favorite areas we've ever visited. And now to get to go back, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this trip. But yeah, next year's trip,
we talked about Croatia. It's July 6th to the 17th next year.
And we've talked about Croatia a couple times, but to get this one done, and I think it's the last week. I think is all on a yacht that we have the whole yacht reserved for this group. So it should be great.
Yeah, it should be awesome. And this one is going to be great. We're going to go to Monaco. We're going to go to the Monte Carlo casino like James Bond and throw some dice, and it'll be fun. We're definitely throwing some dice.
Do we still have to? Do we have to bring a suit to go to that casino?
No, I went on their website, and you just have to dress, professionally or I forget the words they use, but it doesn't sound like we have to drag a suit or a sports coat around. I remember when I went to Monaco, probably early 2000s, and I remember I was on like a 3-week trip, but I grabbed a suit, dragged a suit around Europe for like 3 weeks, and then I go into the Monte Carlo and I proceeded to lose all my money in 5 minutes. So.
On our last trip, we were carrying suit jackets around because our trip obviously had started with AJ's wedding in Greece, and all the women on the trip didn't want to check a bag with their dresses for the rehearsal, the wedding. I think they had some kind of welcome dinner dress that they all had to bring like 3 dresses with them. And I was just planning. I check my bags all the time. I hate carry-ons. I just don't like having to carry it around. But they were all worried that they didn't want to risk having that suitcase get lost with all their dresses in it. So the result was that Vinny said, "All right, I'll carry around a carry-on that has everybody's dresses in it." So then I threw my suits in there. So Vinny is lugging this carry-on wardrobe bag all across Italy after the wedding with my 2 suit jackets, his suit jacket, and like probably 6 or 8 dresses in this carry-on bag. So we won't have to do that just to go to a casino for a night, but I know what it's like to have to lug a suit around with you for a week.
Yeah. And, I can't even imagine cramming all that stuff into a carry-on. So pretty impressive. All right, let's get to the Wild, Anthony. Obviously a very, very quiet opening day of free agency. And we could backtrack a little bit, too, and talk about the draft in a little bit and all the stuff that's been going on. But, they went into free agency. They didn't have a ton of money to spread around. It really started with Bobby Brink, who absolutely, I think he's appropriately paid at 2.75, but it's unbelievable the way ARB works. It's not about the player, it's about the math. And, he got a lot of points on a mediocre team in Philadelphia for a while, and he pumped up his points. He's at 0.46 points per game in his career. And when you start looking at ARB cases, the Wild would have been exposed for a $4 million contract if he had gone to ARB. So usually the way that works is that you work with the agent, you sign a 3-year deal at 3.5 and you settle. But even that was too rich for the Wild's blood. And you see now, because the Wild only have $2.9 million in cap space left. So Bill Guerin and Ben Hankinson talked with Bobby Brink, and he made a concession where he is going to bet on himself and try to have a big breakout year and get a big payday. And he signed a 1-year deal at $2.75 million. And obviously that is a great contract in a normal situation. But considering that he left, about $1 million on the table, you got to give him credit for doing that, for playing ball with the Wild, because he sees opportunity here. This isn't just a Minnesota guy playing ball, giving a hometown discount. This is somebody that looks at the Wild lineup right now, sees a bunch of holes, knows that they just let Zuccarello, Tarasenko, and Johansson leave. That's a ton of production. So he sees opportunity, and he was willing to really do the Wild a favor.
Yeah, well, I think your first point is probably more accurate. I think it's less doing the Wild a favor and saying, I'm going to bet on myself. And now with opportunity, he's looking at it saying he knows he's going to get a crack. There's no guarantee, but he's going to get a crack at a top 6 role with highly skilled players and a chance to certainly be on the second power play group. And you've got every opportunity now to prove that you can score in the NHL. And I think it's more of that, all right, I'll sign this 1-year deal at this price, but now if he becomes a 50-point scorer, now he knows he's going to be able to demand more the next time around. And I do think there's a little bit of like it here, like being at home, like the guys, the organization, being a part of it here too. I don't think that's a small part of it. So I don't know if I'd necessarily say that's doing the Wild a favor or giving a hometown discount, but it's, we talk all the time about these free agents that, whether it be a no-tax state or a climate or the excitement in a city, there are different things that different cities have to offer. And one of the things Minnesota has to offer is the way they take care of their players, a chance to win, a great community in which to live. And I think all of those things, when you then throw on top of it that he happens to be from here, it's probably a reason why there might be a little more willing to leave a few bucks on the table in all of those situations than you might somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when you left your $1 million off the table there to resign
exactly.
with Bally's. What?
Well, I would only have to work about 27 more years or so to get to that $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So then they go into July 1. Obviously, I think all of us expected at least one signing that day. They did sign Calvin Pickard, who, by the way, is just an awesome dude. I mean, I think the Oilers were devastated to see him leave. If you remember last year in mid-December when they were having their goaltending issues with him and Skinner and in Edmonton, there was that emotional hug between him and Skinner in that game against, I believe, Seattle. And then a week later, I think a lot of people just thought that it was, Pickard had a tough game. I think there were a lot of people that thought that was Pickard's last game and that Skinner was consoling him. But then a week later, Skinner was traded. And I happened to be there at the time. That was during that rivalry series between the United States and Canada. And it was just a whole big thing there about their goaltending at the time. They traded for Tristan Jarry, kept Pickard at the time. And, we'll see where it goes here. He's a good Band-Aid to have to, not only fill in for Philip Gustafsson, but win games. He's been around forever. He can win games if you play great defense in front of him. So I think this is a type of deal that could help. They obviously brought in, 4 other two-way guys on contracts, re-signing Gambrell and bringing back Mason Shaw and things like that. But in terms of what they did that day, there weren't a lot of guys that they went after. Jaden Schwartz's deal, he was going to Colorado. That's where he wanted to go. Kuzmenko, I think he got $5 million. That was too rich for the Wild's blood. They, I think, had interest in Bjorkstrand. 4.5 might have been a little too steep for them. But clearly what they did that day is they put all their eggs into Anders Lee's basket. And Anders, to his credit, he might be the only free agent in the world that for all due respect, didn't tamper. Like, he literally started talking to teams that day and fielded calls, and there were 8 teams that had varying degrees. But because of that, the Wild spent all day on that trying to recruit him. And then they found out late in the day that they didn't get him. And by that point, essentially everybody was off the board. I think most people think Claude Giroux is going to Philadelphia or re-signing in Ottawa. Patrick Kane, I think most people think, is going to Buffalo. So they have this intel. And I think that they pivoted yesterday and they made the trade where they sent Jake Middleton to the Calgary Flames for Blake Coleman and Olli Maatta. Sent him a bunch of picks in that deal because you're getting them to retain 50% of Coleman's contract. You're getting him to take more term in Jake Middleton, and they get Jake Middleton off the books, get a cheaper Olli Maatta here. What do you think of the trade, Anthony, and how they pivoted?
Well, we've kind of speculated throughout the spring about the fact that with so many unknowns and so many irons in the fire, so to speak, with whether it was going to be a trade for a significant top 6 type guy, if it was going to be a free agent, that we've always talked about that the Wild were in a little bit of a wait mode because you had to wait to see. Are you going to be able to make the deal that everybody's been rumoring, talking about, wondering about, hoping that the Wild were going to be able to make? And if not, what's plan B, plan C, plan D? And I don't mean to say that as if like these were lesser paths. It was just alternative paths, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was a quick turn for Minnesota after, clearly they were hoping that the Anders Lee thing would work out. And I have no idea how close they got to that. I do think the number he got in Utah is probably bigger than what I would have preferred to offer from a Wild standpoint. And if that's what he was worth on the open market, then good for him and good luck in Utah. But that was beyond what I think Minnesota was willing to pay. And I think we obviously know that now. I still think it's, and Billy made it clear after announcing the trade for Coleman, was that this doesn't mean that they're out of other future deals either, and they still have the flexibility to do that. We had talked about the fact that having some certainty and some cost certainty would have put me in a spot where I really would have wanted to know, can I make that deal before free agency, just so I knew exactly what I had available to make a deal. And I think because they couldn't get that trade done, it probably put them in a tough spot because they had to wait a little bit longer on some of these other deals. In terms of the trade itself, I mean, I like the trade. I don't know how much of a step backward it is, Middleton to Olli Maatta. It's probably a slight step backward, but I don't think it's a major change on your blue line. They have a little depth there. I like Damon Hunt a lot. I think this, I don't think his play down the stretch was any small part of this. I think they have some confidence that he's ready and able to step into a bigger role on the Wild's blue line. Getting Zach Bogosian back gives you some depth there as well. And Coleman brings a little upside. I mean, he's scored 30 in the league. He's had maybe 8, I think 30 plus point seasons in the NHL. He can score, and he does give them. It's not the top 6 forward we were thinking about or talking about with all these other potential trades, but it's a guy who can fit in there, I think. So I think on the ice this year, it's a good trade. Expensive again with future draft picks that the Wild had to give away in this trade, giving away 3 picks, including another number 2 all the way out to 2029 now in terms of how it affects the team on the ice this year, I think it's a good deal for Minnesota.
Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services, your independent authorized Connecticut dealer. It's summer, and that means home improvement season. At Aquarius, they know managing a household and all the expenses that comes with it is no easy task. They also know how important having worry-free water is in your home every day. Your family deserves water you can trust. You use it every day for drinking, cooking, cleaning, and bathing. That's why I'm excited to share that their summer trade-in and trade-up program has started. Trade in your old water softener and trade up to a Connecticut whole home water treatment system. The best part, get an additional $500 off on top of their summer sale prices. Say goodbye to hard water, rust stains, and unwanted contaminants, and hello to cleaner, worry-free water flowing through every faucet every day, all day. It all starts with a free water test scheduled today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to tell them Russo sent you. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We could switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us even switch our favorite sports teams. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you could switch and save with Tony Hoagland State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Tony Hoagland and his team can switch you over so you can start saving today. If you thought your last homeowner's insurance renewal was really high, or it's been a while since you reviewed your coverages, Tony and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Tony and his team, it's easy to switch and save. You can reach out to Tony's office at 763-421-4900 to start saving today. Again, that's 763-421-4900. Yeah, and look, he's in his last year of his contract, with all due respect, because obviously nobody wants to miss the playoffs, but if for some reason this season went awry, it gives them another trade option at the trade deadline, and they would easily recoup those picks. And they've got plenty of time to recoup picks. I know it's uncomfortable. This is now for a team with no prospects, coming off a draft where they only drafted 3 players, to now have no second round picks to 2029. It's pretty difficult. The one thing I'll say, and I like Anders Lee, but I do think that he slows you down a bit. And, if you can get Anders Lee for 1 year, I'd do that in a minute. To get him for 3 years, I think that's tough. So I just actually think, even though I don't think this is nearly the offensive player, I think this is probably a good pivot, maybe even a better option on a 1-year deal, getting somebody younger, much faster, much
at
better.
half the price.
Yeah, at half the price, more than half the price, because I bet you the Wild were offering 3 in the high 4s. And the other thing, Anthony, is like one area where this team just continues to absolutely melt down is on the penalty kill in the playoffs. Now, in the regular season, they were much, much better. But in the playoffs, they continue to suck. And, Olli Maatta, even though he's not nearly as mobile as Jake Middleton, he's definitely a net positive on the PK. And Blake Coleman is one of the best penalty killers in the National Hockey League. So we're finally seeing them, have different personnel that they're going to be putting on their PK this year. And I actually think that's a really good thing. And so we'll see where it goes. Is Blake Coleman your prototypical second line left wing? Absolutely not. But there's still a lot of offseason left. We'll talk about that a little more. The other thing they did on that day, Anthony, is they brought in Maxim Shabanov. He was a KHL star, undersized, skilled, has speed, goes into the hard areas. He did show last year watching him with the Islanders that he definitely, and we see that all the time with guys assimilating to the National Hockey League in their rookie year. We used to see with Mikael Granlund. He was bumped off the puck like nothing, and it got to the point where Patrick Waugh essentially stopped playing him. But maybe that 1 year, allowing him to play in the National Hockey League, will allow him to adjust this offseason, come here and be a better player. They're looking him as somebody that could even be in their top 6. Now, is he a Zuccarello replacement? No, but could I see him maybe even playing on that right wing on the top line? Again, not prototypical, probably not ideal, but, we'll see in camp. I mean, he's a skilled player, and they're going to need somebody to deliver the puck to Kirill Kaprizov with Mats Zuccarello and his 50 assists gone. So I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a guy who I'm sure looked at Minnesota as an opportunity. You can see the roster, you can look at the holes that have to be filled, and the skilled guys that are in the spots that are already locked, and say, you've got every opportunity now. Again, just like we're talking about with with Bobby Brink or Blake Coleman. There's no guarantee, but you know that you're going to get an opportunity here because the Wild have made it clear over the last few years that, and I agree with the philosophy that it's hard to win if you load up one line with Matt Boldy, Kirill Kaprizov, Jules Eriksson Ek. I think you can do it within games. You could do it for maybe within a short period of a season, but I don't think over 82 games that you can rely that heavily on one line to do all of your scoring. So if you start to spread those guys around, now if you're any one of these other players about whom we're speaking, well, you get a chance now to prove that you can play at a level that keeps you on a line with one of the great wingers in the NHL, whether it be Kaprizov or Boldy. So why not take a shot and see? And maybe all of a sudden you, with that elevated role, with that chance to play with star players, you can thrive and make that a one-year deal, turn that one-year deal into a more significant, longer extension type thing. And that's what all three of these guys are going to be looking at this year, I'm sure, is, hey, if I can put up some numbers this year, now the next deal can be a little bit more in the market of where I'd like to be.
We're talking to Olli Maatta for the first time in 40 minutes. Looking forward to talking to him. Always a great guy to talk to. So we'll, and, I think he'll be, even though I think this trade probably caught him by surprise, the Wild clearly wanted him in this deal, and he's used to bouncing around. He's bounced around a ton since his early days in Pittsburgh. It is kind of cool. They get two guys yesterday that both won back-to-back Stanley Cups in their career, one in Tampa Bay, the other in Pittsburgh, and obviously Bill Guerin knows Olli Maatta well, going back to his draft year when he was a first-round pick for the Penguins, and with Shabanov, obviously a low-risk, potential high-reward guy.
Yeah, I thought Billy's comments about Maatta were interesting, where he just, he knew him back in his draft time, but then, there was a stretch where I remember early in his career, people looked at him and thought, like, he's a guy who he's never going to be a flashy guy, but could be a stable, dependable defender, and then went through a tail end of his time in Pittsburgh, where then he ended up bouncing around. I know he went to Chicago and with LA for a little bit before landing in Detroit. And there were a lot of years where he wasn't even an every night in the lineup guy.
Yeah.
But Billy's comments I thought were interesting, where he said, I think his game turned the wrong way for a while, but the last couple of years it's been back to where I thought it could be going back to the times he was drafted.
Do you remember there was that one game, that the Wild played Maatta? I don't even remember what team it was, where after the game I came up to you, I'm like, oh my God. Like, every shift that Maatta was on the ice, the Wild just absolutely dominated. It was
I don't remember what the game was, but I remember that conversation because
wasn't
he
Utah.
was
Yeah.
no,
it might
but
have
he
been
was
Detroit. Yeah.
It could have been, but it was I do remember the night, and there were I don't remember what the numbers were, but I'm going to bet there were 10 scoring chances for the Wild when he was on the ice.
Yeah, it was tough. But look, I mean, there is a reason why he keeps on, you could look at it two ways. There's a reason why he keeps bouncing around, but there's also a reason why he's been in this league for as long as he has. And the Wild are a different defensive team than a lot of teams. The one thing that you worry about is if you have Maatta, Bogosian defense pair, could that get you hemmed in? But we'll see. I mean, look, the Wild, Middleton, we both love Middleton as a guy, but he had a tough postseason 2 years in a row. If you remember last year against Vegas, it was him icing the puck on that one play that ended that series in Game 6, and obviously he had a real rough go this year as well. So you just knew. I've been saying it on this pod for a month that the second his no move becomes a modified no trade, it just made sense for the Wild to look. And then he turns in his no trade that day, and Billy sees, oh, here's one team that I know is available that has interest in him. And
it is kind of interesting that when you wonder, just going back to what we were talking about earlier, that okay, if our number one goal is to try and make a deal for Dylan Larkin, which I think we all
continues to be,
and I think it's not really speculation to say that we know that's what the Wild were hoping to do, but how many, if that doesn't work, what could we do next kind of things. And you wonder, how many different teams had they looked at as with it, even if they hadn't had the discussions with those teams yet, at least with a target of, okay, if he sends us this list and this team's not on it, who would be a fit? And that's we spend a lot of time over the course of the season chatting with scouts for other teams that are in watching. And I was talking with some guys, I don't remember when, a couple of weeks ago. We're just asking me about, like, why do these teams spend all this money on scouts when everybody knows who these players are? Like, why do they send these guys all around the country to watch these, especially the NHL games where you can watch them on TV? And I said, you just never know when that team might end up being the team with whom you're dealing. And you want to know not just the guys everybody knows, but the guys deeper in the lineup. And what specifically can this guy bring? And then when you add that to the American League guys in the same organization where it's, hey, we're trying to make this deal. We want to we want an extra piece. Give us a couple ideas on guys that we could target. And, these are those spots where, okay, Calgary's a potential deal. Who would be a good fit? Or, so you kind of wonder, like, how many other teams did they have a guy? Okay, if this team's not on the list, here's the guy we could target that might fit.
Yeah. It was clear after day one that they definitely were, they made it clear, during their availabilities that the trade option was next. I knew Coleman was available. I didn't look at him as a prototypical guy to replace, Marcus Johansson on that line. But it does make sense, especially when you look at how reasonable they got him at in terms of price and his pedigree, and that he's only got 1 year left on the deal. So it keeps you with a lot of flexibility going forward, where if you had Andrews on a 3-year deal, you wouldn't have as much. Let's talk about Zuccarello, Tarasenko, and Johansson. They still have definitely not replaced their 150 points in the lineup, particularly Zuccarello. I mean, I think you and I would both agree that this was a huge risk, just pivoting from Zuccarello. I think it is extremely clear this was their decision. This is what we have been saying. I remember one of Zuccarello's buddies on Twitter, when I was bringing this up in early June, called my take ridiculous on here. And the reality is that it was so obvious that they had made the decision that they were walking away from Zuccarello because of the East-West hockey and dragging Kirill into that, and their decision to want Kirill to start to play with different wingers. You could agree with it or not, but that is what they decided. That is what Bill Guerin essentially decided after Game 4. Now, where Bill says that this is on him is that he waited too long to tell Zuccarello this. And I think the reason why is because he had so many balls in the air. He was going for Larkin. There was clearly couldn't bring Zuccarello back if they were going to trade for Brady Tkachuk. So I think he was delaying, and then finally had the conversation with Zuki, who did not take it well at first, was very disappointed, saddened, said he squared up with Billy, and then they hugged it out and had a really good finish, and they talked the other day as well. Just because, like, obviously his contract with the LA Kings, the Wild couldn't have done something like that. It made no sense for the Wild. A $1 million deal with a $5 million bonus once he hits 10 games, and then potentially up to $250,000 if they win round 1 and $250,000 if they win round 2. So it's essentially a $6.5 million deal. If the Wild went to him right after the season or early June, he probably would have played ball, signed a 2-year deal with a $3 million AAV or something. That would have been absolutely doable for the Wild. But they decided to move on from him. And look, I get it. You have to pull the Band-Aid at some point. But now, Anthony, when you look at their offseason, the fact that they've lost so much production between Johansson, Tarasenko, and Zuccarello, you do kind of wonder if they knew that if it was going to go this way, if they would have just said, you know what, we're going to bring Zuki back on a 1 or 2 year deal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what their reason was for moving on, but I think the fact that we both thought if they wanted to bring him back, this would have been a very short and quick negotiation. I think that even in hindsight now, looking at what he did agree to in LA, that it seems obvious that they probably could have gotten a deal done in the dollar area that would have worked for Minnesota. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't at least initiate those conversations to say, hey, look, we've got a whole bunch of different options. We got to see what works or doesn't work there first before we make this deal, but at least keep it, I don't wanna say
Open that they
stringing along, because that makes it sound
Mhm.
like you're not being straightforward with the guy, but at least keep him in the back pocket as a possibility if the other things don't work out, because he is gonna be a difficult man to replace. And you can say what you want about the the way the season ended, and that maybe the style of play that those two guys had could have contributed to that. It certainly did. But that's the way they played all season long too, and there were nights where it worked, there were nights where it didn't, and bottom line is this guy was a part of a very good power play, one of the league's elite power plays. He was also a part of a line that scored a lot. I mean, Zucker, at his age, he was still close to a point a game player. That's not easy to replace. So yes, sometimes it can be frustrating. I mean, it's kind of like, go back to really over the last few years. There Kaprizov, Fiala before him. It was okay. The offensive blue line turnovers, the risks that these guys are willing to take, they always leave you scratching your head and beating your head against a wall, but they also score. And, Zuccarello was that kind of player for Minnesota for sure. I mean, yeah, I think at some point that was going to come to an end. It comes to an end now, and we'll see what happens with the new guys they brought in, but that's to expect any one of the three that we've talked about as potential top 6 forward replacements to score at Zuccarello's level, I think is unlikely. But, maybe they can come close to it and bring a different level of responsibility that we didn't see. And responsibility makes it sound like Zuccarello was a lack of effort guy defensively. That's not the case. Just his style of play led to some chances against.
How do you think that Kirill handles this? And I'm not even talking about like his disappointment about Zuccarello leaving, because obviously that exists. He'll get over it. But look, Kirill's a superstar that needs the puck delivered to him, and Zuccarello did that more than anybody in Wild history, and did it most efficiently than anybody in Wild history. I mean, how many times on give and goes did Kirill not have the puck, and then all of a sudden the puck's in the back of the net because Zuki had eyes in the back of his head? I mean, we saw them after every single practice playing around together for half hour, 40 minutes, just practicing all this type of stuff. Um, you know, for Kirill to be a $17 million man, he needs to have somebody get him the puck in scoring position. So if all of a sudden Kirill has a down year, it's hard to pin all that on him, because this is going to be a delivery mechanism that he suddenly lacks. So somebody is going to have to step up and get him the puck. And right now, it's not clear who's going to be that guy.
Well,
Unless he
that's
plays with Boldy, right? Like, we know that Boldy is as good a passer as he is a shooter, but
yeah, and there will be times for certain that you'll end up with those guys playing together, maybe more than in the past. But I think I was looking at some of the numbers at kind of late in the season this year, and I don't remember them off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and do some digging, but I do think the Zuccarello and Kaprizov chemistry and connection got a little bit exaggerated as over these last couple of years.
especially at even strength.
Yeah, they made some remarkable plays together for sure. But when you looked at Kaprizov's numbers with and without Zuccarello, there really wasn't that big of a difference. It
Yeah.
wasn't like he scored at a 50% increase when Zuccarello was on the ice with them. They probably made more highlight reel plays, but the truth is that the scoring wasn't that different, and at least at the time I looked kind of late in the season. I'll have to go back and do some digging into that to see if it carried on. But I want to say it was like the expected goals went from like 57 to 59 or something like that. The Corsi was like 52 to 54. I mean, it was a jump, but it wasn't like Kaprizov was a superstar with him and a mediocre or average player without him.
Yeah, no, it's a point. I mean, it's actually a great point because, I saw somebody the other day, like, what are they going to do about Kirill? Zuccarello assisted on like 160 of his goals, and that is actually not even close to true. Of Kaprizov's 230 goals, Zuccarello had an assist on 93 of them. But look, I mean, no, Mats Zuccarello, to give Paul Fenton some credit here, man, turned out to not only be an incredible signing for the organization in terms of production, but you could credit Zuccarello for a lot of Kirill Kaprizov. And remember, Kirill wasn't here when Paul Fenton was here. But in hindsight, man, did Zuccarello turn out to be the perfect mentor for this guy. I mean,
yeah, he
absolutely
was.
in every way.
Right, and he turned out to be a guy that had a lot left. I remember and I always liked Zuccarello in New York. I liked him a lot, and I loved his line that he was playing with at the end of his time there in New York. I thought it was one of the best lines in the NHL. And I remember when they signed him, and it was a 5-year deal at first, and there were a lot of people saying, 5 years for this guy? And I was like, I don't know. He to me looks like he can still play, and maybe the 5th year we're going to think he's overpaid, but I'm going to bet that he's a valuable player for the first part of the contract. And now, as much as we talk about how Kirill's game might slip a little bit, Zuccarello's game benefited a lot from having Kaprizov with him. That I want to make that clear. Like when I was looking at these numbers, the Zuccarello's numbers were way better when playing with Kaprizov than they were without. But that doesn't matter to Minnesota because he's the guy who's gone. I'm just saying Kirill's numbers didn't take a major dip when he didn't have Zuccarello with him. So Zuccarello benefited from Kaprizov, but it turned out to be a guy that had a lot left to give offensively. And as you and I have talked a lot, and I think it's been well documented now, this was a guy that was he was a terrific leader by example inside the Wild room, where he was the guy that stood up in front every time the Wild got beat. He was reluctant to take the credit when they won. In fact, when he had big nights and wins, he was a hard guy to find in the dressing room after games sometimes.
He's the only player I've ever covered that wanted to talk after losses and not wins.
Right. And he wanted the responsibility, but deflected the credit. And I remember there was a time, it was late in Dean Evason's time as the head coach, where he had a meeting with him and asked him to set a better example in practice, and said, the way you play in games, nobody's questioning. Your effort level's unbelievable. But he said, we got some young guys we want them to see how hard you work in practice. And there was a noticeable difference from that point on, where he was a guy that didn't coast in those days. And I think it set a great example for some of the young up-and-coming players for the Wild. So he's a guy that's going to be missed, and a lot more than just scoring. You mentioned his mentoring of Kirill. I mean, that was no small part of Kirill's adjustment to the NHL, was the way Zuccarello took him under his wing and helped him with life in the NHL, life in North America, life in the Twin Cities. All of that stuff is hard to quantify, but it was all valuable.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, make sure you download the Onyx Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the Onyx Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. Onyx Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download Onyx Fish on the App Store or visit onyxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch.
My friends have been all in on Lucy lately, and the good news is it's never been easier to try, because Lucy is now available at Quick Trip. They've tried just about every pouch out there, and Lucy has become the one they keep coming back to. Great flavor, great strength options, and a pouch that actually holds up. You can get Lucy in mint, apple ice, mango, espresso, berry citrus, and apple cider. The flavor lasts, and if you want to try the entire lineup, start with the 6-pack. The game changer is Lucy Breakers. Every pouch has a burstable flavor capsule. Bite into it for an extra hit of flavor and a smooth kick that keeps going. My friends call Lucy top tier, and they recommend it to everyone. Give them a try. Get 20% off your first order when you buy online at lucy.co/worstseats with promo code worstseats. That's lucy.co/worstseats with promo code worstseats. And if you don't want to wait, check out their store locator to find where you can pick up Lucy at your nearest Quick Trip today. Here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Yeah, I remember. I give Zuccarello a lot of credit. I mean, first of all, he's a true pro. But look, I mean, I don't know if we've ever really talked about it on the podcast, but full disclosure, he and I didn't get along for the first 3 or 4 years that he was here, and he and I finally had that he called. He and I had about a half-hour meeting at the end of season 3 years ago, I believe. Sat down for 30 minutes, got it out, squared up, as he likes to say, had a really calm, professional conversation, and he and I were extremely tight the last 3 years. That's all. I wish it happened 5 years ago, right? I mean, it just, I really respected that, and we had a good heart to heart. And the last 3 or 4 years, we were really, really tight in the locker room, relatively.
Last name ends in a volley. You got to trust guys like that.
Exactly. Sorry to see him go. Another guy that I think and you'll love the hypocrisy of this comment that I think the Wild are going to miss deeply is Marcus Johansson. Another guy loved in that locker room, but on the ice, I've obviously, I just thought he was miscast in his role here, but nobody gets the puck up the ice better than him, especially on that second power play unit. They're going to miss that, Anthony, big time.
Well, yeah, no doubt. And he will be missed because he was the guy. I remember having conversations with so many on the Wild staff he's the guy everybody on the team wants to play with. They all want him on their line. And whatever line he was assigned, that line got better. And the line he played with Boldy and Eriksson Ek was one of the top shutdown lines that could also score in the NHL. Yeah, he's going to be a tough guy to replace. And I mean, even if you look at, I think Blake Coleman might be the guy that gets the first shot to take that spot and potentially be that. And he might end up being a great player on that line who brings some speed, brings a defensive responsibility, brings more goal scoring than Johansson for sure. But when you look at his overall scoring numbers are actually probably similar. I think it's 8 30-point seasons in a row. That's roughly where Johansson was. He did have one 30-goal season and one 20-goal season lately. So maybe more of a goal scorer than a passer. But these are all the little things that you have to find somebody to take that spot. And you have to find somebody that brings to the table something similar to what he did. It will be difficult to replace, just as Tarasenko's will. I mean, even though the guy is at this point in his career, he scored more than 20 goals last year. And can Bobby Brink do that? We don't know that yet. So that's kind of, I mean, I know you joke about it now, but that was kind of the thing I was always saying about these guys is that what you have in these guys who have proven they can do it in the NHL. And now we're hoping that somebody who's never had that opportunity before can thrive in that role. And maybe they will. We'll find out. But those are all unknowns that are questions that will have to be answered by this team early in the year.
All right, 10 more minutes left in the show, Anthony. We're going to wrap it up. Let me go to some Twitter questions. First of all, a text question from our mutual friend, Lisa. She goes, we start off the offseason being a number one center away. Now that we have lost a lot of, we being her, by the way, she's a Wild fan. Now that we have lost a lot of players, how far away are we just getting back to just needing a number one center? So in other words, she's saying, is the Wild right now, are they worse than they were 3-4 days ago. I mean, it's hard to say they're not when you lose that much production.
Yeah, I don't think they're worse, but they have some questions, and that's kind of the point I was just making, is that there was a time you had to find out, are these next guys, is Danila Yurov ready to take a step? Is Charlie Stramel ready to take a step? Is Hunter Haight ready to take a step? As much as we don't know for sure with all that, there's a lot there that you're missing. The three players you just mentioned are all three proven NHL players. But I don't think it's fair to say that they're worse right now. It's just they're different. We don't know yet if they're worse. They might be better. If all of a sudden, let's say Blake Coleman thrives in a role with those guys and he brings what Johansson brought plus the ability to score a little bit. Let's say that Bobby Brink is able to replace what Tarasenko did, where he could score, but he also he doesn't slow a line down necessarily. Let's say Yurov is ready to continue his climb toward being the type of player that Eriksson Ek is now. There are guys here that it's reasonable to expect that their game is going to improve, whether it be just because of age and maturation or increased opportunity. So I think we have to wait to see on that. And, I don't think anybody thought the best template for a Stanley Cup contender was with Marcus Johansson in your top six, as an example. So maybe it is with Danila Yurov in your top six as he matures. Maybe it is with Blake Coleman in your top six. We'll find out.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to some questions on X real quick. Let's see. Tougher Roughing goes, how delusional is the Red Wings media defending the failed Yzer plan and thinking Boldy is the only thing they'll accept for Larkin? I mean, I don't know if it's delusional. I think that, that Red Wings media and the fan base have watched a rebuild go on for like 9 years and it hasn't worked. So I think what they're saying is if you're going to trade Dylan Larkin, you want actual NHL players back and not a bunch of futures to do a rebuild on the rebuild. So I don't blame Steve Yzerman for stubborn is even the wrong word, for digging in his heels here. Like right now, Dylan Larkin has put him in a position where there are 3 teams that we know that he wants to go to, and 2 of them right now don't look like they have any interest in him. Florida definitely doesn't, and Vegas doesn't look like they're positioning themselves to get him, at least as of now. So right now, the only bidder at the table seems to be Minnesota that he's willing to go to. So Dylan's put them in a position where he only wants to go to one team, and the Wild just don't have the prospects that seem to excite him right now. I can't blame him. The Wild don't even know what they have in Stramel and Danilo Yurov, so why should we all just expect that, whether it's the New Jersey Devils or the Detroit Red Wings, that they should just go and give away their superstars for those players,
Well, right. And he might be posturing by, hey, Matt Boldy's the guy that interests me, if that does nothing other than up the price from the Minnesota Wild, then he wins. But I got to tell you, I've thought about this a lot, that we've talked on this show about that I have some, I don't know, fear is not the right word, but I have a little bit of concern about where the league's headed with some of these guys. Like, hey, I'd like to be traded and I only want to go to this team or this team or this team. If I'm Steve Yzerman, I would have a difficult time when a guy walks in who's negotiated a no-move clause. He's negotiated it and the team was willing to give it to him. But if you walk in my office and say, I'd like to be traded, I'd have a hard time not just saying, okay, well, then tear up your no-move clause and we'll make a deal. But you can't come in here and say, I'd like to be traded and I only want to be traded to one of these 2 teams. Maybe that's why I wouldn't be cut out to be a GM, because I'd be, well, screw you. I'll take the C away and enjoy your next 5 years here getting bashed by the fans, but you're the captain, you're from this area. I'm not saying you can do that. That might not be why I'd be wired to be a GM, because just be like, look, you're the one who wanted a no-move clause. You've got 5 years left on a deal.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same guy that it's easy for me to say from my chair, but I'm the same guy that said when the Wild offered $16 million to Kirill Kaprizov and he turned it down, I would have been like, that's enough and moved him. I mean, like, and then when Paul Theophanis had the audacity to turn down $17 million and ask for 18, I would have absolutely said the hell with this. And now look at the Wild; they're in a position where they're going to be hamstrung for a while. So I get you. Let's just continue because we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left in the show because I do need to ask Alex something and I have to get to this Olli Maatta press conference. What percentage of you, this is to me, are serious when you are trolling some of the crazies with the Jack Hughes comments in your articles and tweets? I would never put anything in an article that I don't know to be true. And the only thing I've written in there is the Wild have called on them and the Wild will continue to call on them. And if they stink next year, the Wild will really, really, really call on them. That is absolutely true. The one tweet that I wrote to that quote unquote crazy, you called him that, was a troll because that guy is just absolutely relentless in talking about the Wild.
Crazy?
A lot of those Devils fans. Yeah. What's that?
I called him crazy?
No, talking to me. I called him crazy.
Oh, yeah. I got you.
Yeah. You'd call him crazy too.
Some of these
Devils
I guess I'd have to check it out.
Some of these Devils and podcasters and bloggers are absolutely obsessed with the Wild, all because they missed. Their GM missed out on Quinn Hughes and the Wild did not. And it's just beyond belief the way that they just sit there and pay attention to every Wild stuff. Todd Vargas says, do you think Billy has the stones to offer sheet Leo Carlsson? I don't, because one, I don't think they have the money to do that because you'd have to give them
picks either, right?
Yeah. Well, it would be first round picks, and they have first round picks in the future. It would be 4 of them. But the other thing is Anaheim has apparently made it clear, according to Elliot Friedman, to everybody that if they offer sheet Leo Carlsson, that they will match. So you'd just be negotiating the deal for them essentially. John asks, do you feel this will be Spurgeon's final season and retire? Hopefully Brock's time is coming for the C. I do think it's going to be probably his final season in Minnesota unless he's willing to take a real big discount. I don't think he's ready to retire. I sat in his kitchen for that 1,000-game story, and he doesn't want to retire, but he also doesn't want to play anywhere else, Anthony.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if this was his last.
John asked, Billy would never include Boldy in a Larkin trade, right? Right. Let's see. Do you think Sturm or Trenyon will be moved still? Forwards definitely in the bottom 6 are crowded, Anthony, and they are only at 2.9 above the cap. It really feels like if they are continuing their pursuit of Larkin, and I believe they believe that there is a path to get Larkin. So if they get Larkin, they are going to have to move money. I mean, it's just right. Larkin makes 8.7 and they only have 2.9 left. They are going to have to move money.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a money out, money in, and it might be 2 deals to make that happen.
Yeah. Wild Boys, are you surprised Vladimir Tarasenko is a free agent still? Not really. I think when he fired his agent, it shows he wanted to be paid. And right now, clearly he's having issues finding a job. I wondered if the Wild would circle back to him because he has still scored 23 goals with the Wild and had one of the biggest goals of the playoffs. He can make a play. But unless he was willing to take a sweetheart deal, I don't think he can come back here now unless the Wild get rid of one of those players that somebody just asked about.
Yeah, I think that's all. This might be part of plan F or H or something where, hey, if we have to make these deals to make this work, he's a guy you could try and circle back with to come back at a discounted price. But I do think it's indicative of that he probably had a number in mind that was way beyond what the Wild were willing to pay.
Yeah. All right. Last question of the show. Why was Zucchi's new contract with LA structured the way it is at $1 million, but turns into 6 after 10 games? Seems pretty much an absolute lock. He'll play 10 games. So why the incentive bonus? Essentially, it was kind of what we've been talking about on this podcast for a little while, is that in the NHL, it's basically cap circumvention. If you are close to the cap ceiling, you could do these bonuses on 35-year-olds on a 1-year deal, and it allows you, if you go over the cap ceiling, to put that overage on the following year. And it's essentially a way to punt the pain down the road and to go over the cap. I wonder if the league is going to crack down on this lately. I mean, a $5 million bonus on 10 games couldn't be more obvious what they're doing. It's allowed though, but it definitely, it doesn't seem like it's the right way to handle these type of things. But
no, I mean, and they were the spirit of the rule was so that you could sign a veteran guy, and hey, if you end up still being a productive player, we can increase your contract, but there's less of a guarantee when you're at that age. As soon as I saw this deal, I thought there's almost, well, I shouldn't say no chance, but I'd be shocked if they don't have some kind of a limit to the percentage of the total package that can be labeled as a bonus, where it's got to be something like, if you want to give $2 million in bonuses, the base salary has to be $2 million or something like that. I'll bet that we see some kind of change in that area. The only reason why right now it might be a bigger problem is because of how much the cap is already known to be going up in these future years, that everybody's willing to kick something down the road, knowing that, hey, we're going to have more space and more flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you knew the cap was the same next year, then
it'd be a
very,
very tough deal for the Wild to do, because look, I mean, if Spurgeon leaves, they're going to have to replace him. Quinn's going to get $15, $16, $17 million. You know, it's hard for the Wild to sit there and do that deal, but I think that Zucker would have played ball in a different type of structure with the Wild. All right, great podcast, Anthony. Our next live show will be July 20th at Elsie's at 7 p.m. Forgot to mention that earlier in the show. Again, our next live show is July 20th at 7 p.m. at Elsie's. Our next podcast will be from Nice, France, somewhere around July 12th or 13th. So definitely tune in for that. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer of Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, Lucy Nicotine Pouches, and State Farm with Tony Hoagland. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive